All right. Welcome back to the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast, number 82. I'm Matt Dernlan, and I'm joined here with a couple special guests. We have Logan Stieber, four-time NCAA champ, just recently launched the Stieber Elite Wrestling Academy, and also Kyle Snyder was able to pop in. What's up, guys? Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I know there's a lot to unpack and a lot to jump into, but before we did that, obviously there's been a lot of talk and discussion about when's the new wrestling shoe coming out. We just did our first pre-release this weekend to let everybody know that September 15th, the shoes are going to be in, ready to be ordered. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the shoe. I think people are going to be really excited about this year's model, completely re-engineered, 4 new models, new materials, new designs, new outsole, pretty much new everything. So wanted to, bring that to the public, talk about that, let everybody know when they'll be able to order the shoe. Again, that's going to be on September 14th, but also get your first impressions. Logan, I know this is the first time you've tried on the shoe. Yeah. What are your first thoughts about the shoe?
Oh, I love it. It feels good, like right away. That's something I think is important in the shoe is you don't need a lot of time to break it in. You can put it on and go. So I love that aspect of it, and it just the design is cool. I mean, those white bottoms are nice, and I'm excited to wear them. It's a great shoe.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that we tried to target last year was one of the biggest things, like you were talking about, making a ready-made shoe that as soon as you put it on your feet, you feel like you're able to compete. And I think that's something that's new to the consumer. Like, I think everybody's so used to, like, all right, I better order my shoes at least a month in advance, wear them, so they don't feel like cinder blocks on my feet. You got to bend them. Some shoes, I know, like the grip's so slick, you got to go to the parking lot, scuff them on the asphalt and everything. So I think that's one of the components that we really captured last year was it was ready-made, ready to go as soon as you put it on your feet. That was one of the elements, in addition to the improvements we wanted to make, we also wanted to hold on to the elements that we really captured and really hit the mark on. And I think the one is the feel of the shoe is just fantastic. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think this is an amazing looking shoe. I'm not just saying that because the guy's name that's on the shoe is here with us right now. But Kyle, how is this? Like, is it still kind of surreal? Like, I have my own shoe. Like,
yeah, it's cool. It's cool for sure. And it's cool to see how the shoe is evolving. And people always ask me how much influence I have in like the creation of the shoe. And I always tell them I'm not a shoe designer. I'm a wrestler. So I don't have a big impact in what it looks like other than, picking some of the material and the colors and things I like. But the coolest thing about the shoe process to me is just how involved our shoe designers are in watching, I'm the athlete that has the shoe, and then we obviously have the RUDIS, 2 versions of the RUDIS shoe, and then the Sly Fox. So we got to see Dave wrestle, but he's not competing anymore. So obviously the shoe designers can watch me compete now, and then they can design a shoe around my style and the way that I wrestle. And I think one of the coolest parts about the shoe is the wires going from the shoe underneath of it and connecting, and the story behind that, how our shoe designer Dan Richard, he wanted to cage, one of the strongest athletes, I guess, in the sport, and he was going walking home, and he saw this bridge that he drives by and how there's wires going underneath the bridge, and he was like, man, that's a cool idea. Wonder if we could put that in a shoe. And then he put it in the shoe, and it looks awesome, and it feels really good. So, yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I know last year when we just signed you, the shoes were already kind of in development. We kind of had prototypes kind of targeted and, what we were going to do with it. But this year, how's it been this year, like coming up with a complete new redesign from scratch? And I know you've had a lot more influence and engagement in the discussion of the shoe. But I think that's one of the cool things about Dan, our shoe designer. Not only was he a former wrestler himself, but he's got this great artistic mind, and he really I love just sitting down and talking with him about what's going on in his mind. Like, I would never walk past a bridge and think that's going to be the shoe design for Kyle. Like, how do we contain and harness all this, power, for this athlete? So for you working with Dan, I think it's kind of neat that he tries to get in your head about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, or what, how you envision yourself as an athlete and what a shoe, should feel like.
Yeah. And last year was my first year, so I didn't know how the process would be. And coming out of college, there were, a couple different companies that were offering me shoes. And they would bring me different shoes and say, do you like this one or do you like that one, or what do you like? And I'm like, man, I'm not 100% sure what I really like. And it's hard for me to describe because like I said, I'm not a shoe designer. But the cool thing about Dan in this process is he took the time to not ask me about shoes that I like, but ask me about my style of wrestling and the way that I think about competing, and watching film of me compete and coming to watch me in person and practice and in competition. And I think that's where you really get to tell the story of an athlete in a shoe. So, and RUDIS wants to tell stories. We don't just want to sell product, but we want to embody the sport of wrestling in everything that we do. So, and I think Dan does a really good job with that in the shoe process. He learns about who I am as a person, who I am as a wrestler, the way that I move on the mat and where I'm putting pressure in, and then he's able to create something because that's what he's an expert in. So it's a cool process.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of the first times where, at least in our community, in the wrestling community, where you've got a company and a shoe designer who's actually, he's making a shoe to fit the athlete, not an athlete to fit the shoe, right? And I think that's kind of lost as some of the fundamental components that, how powerful. I mean, really, when you break down the wrestling shoe, this is like one of the most intimate things we own, right? Because we don't have any other equipment. We don't have, outside of a singlet. That's just basically to cover us up so we're not obscene looking out there, right? But really, that's what I loved about Dan trying to tap in the importance of this. This is the most intimate thing we have, right? Like, I don't know how you thought about your shoes, Logan, when you were competing, but I know for me, it was a really personal thing. There's certain shoes that I wanted because they felt a certain way or I had a certain experience in them. But what were kind of your experiences?
Yeah, I mean,
with
shoes? I feel like wrestlers as a group are superstitious. So for shoes, it was like, okay, well, these are the shoes I want, and I want these shoes every time. And if I was wearing some shoes or got new ones and it didn't feel good, or it's too tight, it was immediately I had to switch them up. So I think the wrestling shoe, like you said, it is extremely intimate, and it's really the most important thing when you're wrestling. You can wrestle in spandex, you can wrestle in sweatpants, you can no shirt when you're at practice, but shoes are, you have to have your shoes, right? If you forget your shirt, that's okay. Everyone's got another shirt, but shoes, you can't forget your wrestling shoes. So it's extremely important. It's very cool for me to learn, what's been going on in the process and seeing the design. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's pretty like when you actually get into it, Kyle. You have as much knowledge as pretty much everybody in the business about what goes into making a shoe. It's a pretty ambitious adventure. I mean, I think a lot of people, they think, oh, cool, I can come up with a cool design, I can make this shoe, and I don't know where they think. You just send it off to Walmart and people make it. But it's so comprehensive, in detail, and the process in developing a shoe is so time intensive. People aren't even aware of everything that goes into making a shoe.
No, yeah. And you say I know a lot, but I don't know that much. I keep myself out of knowing all this stuff because I want to, I still want to focus on wrestling and improving. And so, yeah, I mean, just the parts that I've been involved in, I'm like, wow, this is over my head, and I don't know what to say or how to talk about these different things. But I just receive guidance from the people that I do trust, and know that they're going to create a good product, and they're doing the best that they possibly can to make something unique and really efficient, and that is durable. And I believe they've done that with these shoes. So there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's not just the shoe, it's the box, it's the presentation, it's the marketing, it's all those different things. So
yeah, because I think that's one of the coolest things, like just in your shoe with the box itself. And I don't know if we want to sneak peek and give everybody away, but we've actually got a personal message in there from you about the shoe, which I think is cool. The personal touches that we've incorporated, like we want it to be more than just a shoe. We want it to be an experience, right? And I think that's kind of the cool part about this is, from the box, unboxing it, unpacking it, putting on your shoe for the first time. We want it to be just a pretty, really engaging, exciting opportunity all across the board. So I know you did touch on, you like to focus on training. You need to continue to focus on your training. We stole you from the office. You popped in. So thanks for jumping on here real quick.
Thanks,
I know you're doing something. You want to talk about what you're doing on social media the next couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah. So I'm giving away 2 pairs of shoes. So be looking for a tweet, Instagram coming out soon. Signed pair in your guys' size, whoever wins, we'll get them in their size signed. And so we'll see what happens. Details will be coming out soon.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks for stopping in. We'll see you over in Kazakhstan in a couple weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
See you, man.
All right, so Logan, appreciate, and I forgot, everybody's probably wondering where's Ben at, right? Ben right now, just, I think last week they released his next fight. I think he's fighting Damian Maia over in Asia, and I think in October.
Yeah.
So they just finalized the agreement on the fight. They made a last-minute phone call to Ben, so he flew over to Asia this past weekend and was promoting the fight. So he's actually, I was talking to him before we got on the podcast. He was just getting on a flight for that enjoyable 24-hour flight back to the United States. Yeah. So that's where Ben's at right now. But I did wanted to thank you for jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome that you're here working with us. Really wanted to, I know yesterday or 2 days ago, 2 days ago, you officially launched Stieber Elite Wrestling Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that go?
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was nerve-wracking, right? So I woke up Sunday morning and I was telling my wife, I'm pretty nervous. Now, I've done, hundreds and hundreds of wrestling camps, right? But this is so much more. It's a commitment for the whole season and hopefully for the whole year, right? In years to come. So I was pretty nervous when I woke up, and once I got everything set up and people started coming in, signing up and everything, it went really well. I have a really good staff. People help me out. Sal is kind of my main assistant coach, co-head coach. And then I have 2 other guys help me out. Kid named Mitch wrestled at Nebraska.
Okay.
And then Brendan Fitzgerald wrestled at Ohio State.
Okay.
So we had four guys, college wrestlers, former college wrestlers on staff helping out. So it went really well. The kids were great. Parents did a great job. Good group of parents there. And I think there was some weather in the holiday weekend, but I think we had probably close to 70 kids total. Both groups.
That's amazing, considering Labor Day with the weather and everything else.
Yeah, it was really good. And youth, a little bit more youth, they did a great job, a lot of learning. And then the high school kids, I was telling you before, it was like mid-season. I mean, these guys were drilling hard. And for me to see high school kids like that drilling hard and picking up, the skill was good. Still working on the basics first day. Man, they were working hard. It was inspiring for me to see. And I left it. I couldn't even fall asleep that night. I was so excited. I was thinking about the guys, and I was thinking about just what we can do more. And I was kind of like laughing at myself because I was nervous before, and it went really well. And I expected to really like it and enjoy it, but I didn't expect it to like it as much as I did. It was more than I thought, and I was really excited. And yeah, I'm excited for the future.
Well, like you were talking about, like, at this point, you've done what, thousands of clinics, thousands of camps. It's just like, it's one of those things where you know how to come in, flip the switch, teach. And then when you walk away, you've kind of moved beyond it, and you're kind of thinking about the next clinic or the next camp or the next thing you're doing now. Like, this has got your name on it, even though you're like a featured clinician at a camp, or you're coming in to do a clinic somewhere. All eyes are on you, but just the fact that your name is on some. This is your business. This is your organization.
Right.
Like, and how you view that. I mean, it changes everything. That almost what you've previously known and what you previously go into, right?
Yeah, it was cool. It was funny because I was thinking about it that night. While I was up, I couldn't sleep, and I felt like after just 1 2-hour practice, hour 45, like they were my guys, right? They were like I immediately had their back, and ready to go to war, with them, for them, ready to.
It's called the coaching bug. The coaching bug, right?
I wasn't expecting it. I was like, man, these are my guys now.
It's going to be fun to talk about. Like, I know, like, we all went through that experience. At some point, we all have to leave our shoes on the mat. We got to transition into something else. And how quickly, your mindset evolves about focusing on you, the competitor.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about all these other guys. Like, I need to do this for John, and this for Mark, and this for Luke, and this for David. Like, all these things in your minds. Like, and then once you see them really start picking up the things you're teaching, it's just like, I used to think when I was competing, there's could be nothing better than this.
Yeah.
But then when you start having success as a coach and seeing kids buy in and believe not only in your moves, but your system, your philosophy, your way of life, and the way you approach the sport. I mean, it's so rewarding. So I'm excited to continue to periodically check in with you and Sal, see how things are going. Especially, like, is the plan for you guys to take your athletes to competitions, or you're pretty much a training facility?
Both, yeah.
Both?
Yep. So we were invited to a couple dual meet tournaments already. We'll probably next year we'll start that. I mean, just the beginning of it. We don't really know which guys are going to be, with the Stieber Elite Club full time or there's part time. So we probably won't do any dual meet tournaments or anything like that this year. But as far as tournaments go, we're going to go to tournaments, and Sal and I are going to travel, and we're putting together a list right now of tournaments that we recommend that they go to and that we'll be at. And obviously they can go to as many tournaments as they want. I don't think that every wrestler needs to be on the same path, right? Some people, they want to wrestle 100 matches, and there's nothing I can say to get them out of it. So I'm like, wrestle 100 matches. I wrestled 100 matches when I was growing up.
Yeah.
All my friends did too, and they got burnt out. I didn't get burnt out, but I enjoyed it. So I was the guy who could, wrestle that many matches. Some people, they want to wrestle 50 matches. Just,
Well, I mean, what would be your advice to parents? Like, and I think that's probably one of the most critical roles is how the parents are guiding the athletes, and then sometimes I think parents, like, you got to push them harder. Other times, like, hey, pull them back depending on the age or the motivation or so how are you going to try and talk and educate parents as well
so
as the kids?
I think it's important to, be able to read the wrestlers, right? Read the athletes to see if they enjoy competing and they're having fun and they don't get discouraged when things go wrong. I think competing, every week, every other week is good. I think sometimes people growing a little bit in their wrestling, they don't need to compete as much.
Yeah.
So I think that everyone's different, and I think that hopefully they can they trust me in me pushing their kids, their guys to where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, and I'm not just saying this. I think it's not just you, but any individual that really has a passion to teach elementary kids up through high school. I think you've got the hardest job in the world, because you've got so many different factors to consider. Like, all right, what's the best approach for the 6-year-old who's never even put on wrestling. She's never even been on a wrestling mat. And then, where's the balance when you get into high school, and depending on, what the goal is of the kid, just to be a starter on the team, get to the state tournament, win the state title, going to college, what level, navigating through all those things. There's so many different, not only conversations, but thoughts and planning that goes into those conversations as well, right?
Yeah, there's a million options. It can get crazy if you start to think about it. So while there is a kind of a case by case, and each wrestler will want something different, I think it will be important, and our message to the guys will be to really try to love the sport and keep getting better. That's why I told the guys, when they wrestle a little bit live, I don't care, if you guys are getting taken down or and getting beat in practice. I don't care. Just keep wrestling.
Yeah.
So the whole position, the whole live go, and give your best effort. So that's going to be my message that I keep pushing to them. Learn how to be a great wrestler, and there's going to be people who are going to want to compete more. You have a 6-year-old who, has been rolling around for a couple of years, and they like, Dad, I want to compete. I want to compete. I want to compete. Awesome. Send them to a couple tournaments. They keep it. They keep enjoying it. Keep competing. But there might be another 6-7-year-old who's like, I like practice a lot. I have friends there. I'm still getting better. I still need to, I don't really want to compete that much.
And I think that's the hardest thing, when you're a high level athlete like yourself, and when I've coached in college, it's like, hey, you know what? Wrestling is just a great sport just to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many valuable things just by learning about this sport, understanding about this sport, and being exposed to it, that you don't necessarily have to be that. Every kid that gets involved in the sport doesn't have to be the Olympic champ, right? There's so many other things that you could, whether you are involved with the sport for a season, 2 seasons, 10 years, there's always great things that you can take away. And I think so many times, as high-level competitors and coaches, we're thinking this is the only thing that you should be shooting for, but there's so much more that the sport could teach you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, it can kind of catapult you into lots of different directions. I remember growing up, before we were pretty good, my brother and I, but we didn't know really the logistics of everything with wrestling, scholarships and wrestling in college and all that stuff. But I remember my dad saying, when he worked construction and it was hard, he'd be gone for a week, and saying that you don't want to do what I'm doing. This is hard, right? He's like, so you guys are gonna need to get a scholarship though. You guys got to work hard wrestling because it'll be hard, but it'll get you guys to school. And that was kind of always our goal before we even thought about winning NCAA titles. And before we really even started about wrestling for Ohio State, it was our wrestling's gonna get us to school, right? Get us to college, get us a scholarship, all that stuff. So, even if I guess we wouldn't have had success in college, right? Our work that we put in before that got us there, and you see it all the time. Whether it translates into a full scholarship or partial scholarship or even books, right? It's there's millions of different things, but wrestling can take you along.
Or even just the opportunity. Like that, I think we talked about that before. Like some people, like they look beyond, they think there's only just, I've got to get this scholarship. But you know what? Ohio State's pretty stinking hard to get into.
Yeah.
And just to get the opportunity to be a walk-on, like, hey, I'm going to get an Ohio State education, an Ohio State wrestling experience, be a part of this great opportunity. I think just even the opportunity to even go to Ohio State, people sometimes, I think, don't take that into consideration. Like, hey, in 4 years, even if I have to pay for it, I'm still going to walk away saying I was an Ohio State graduate. And that's a pretty valuable thing.
Yeah, wrestling is, while it is tough, it has lots of benefits.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm excited to help these guys.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the update. You want to talk about, if people don't know where they can sign up for Stieber Elite, how to sign up, and when your sessions are going to be?
Yep. So if you want to sign up, it's StieberElite.com. Make sure you spell my name right. STIE.
I before E.
Yep. So that'll be that sometimes get mixed up. But if that doesn't work, you can always go to our social media or my social media, send me a message, and we can help figure it out. But the practice schedule is Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. And we're having a clinic on Saturday, this Saturday, because we didn't have practice yesterday because of Labor Day.
Gotcha.
So when the school's off, we can't have our practice, which stinks, but it's one of the things that we kind of have to do if we're going to use the great facility. So I think it's a good trade-off. There's not too many days where there's a mistake, and if you remember that the clinic is free on Saturday.
And I think people, it's pretty well known at this point. You know, the Stieber Elite Wrestling Academy takes place in the Cavelli Wrestling Complex at Ohio State University. I think it's safe to say the best wrestling facility in the entire country at this point. So,
Yeah.
you know, the experience you're going to have, you know, obviously, you know, I would always joke to people when whatever room I was teaching in, is like, hey, I don't care how great this room looks.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to make you a better wrestler, but to be a part of that experience and going in, you know, taking part in Ohio State's wrestling complex and their facility and just showing, you know,
yeah,
you couldn't ask for a better wrestling room to go in and
yeah,
you know, have a good time.
Nice. We're very grateful to be able to use the Jennings Center and it's a great place. So.
Cool. Well, I know we brought you in here. Appreciate the update, talking about the shoe. Yeah. But the one thing that everybody wanted to talk about on the heels of yesterday was the Yianni Zain, the conclusion finally, right?
Yeah,
the resolution or whatever you want to talk about this. But I don't think there's a better person in the country to have a insightful conversation about this than you. You know, you were our world team rep a year ago at 65. You know even though you didn't compete against these guys too much, right?
Yeah,
Did you ever?
I wrestled
Zain, right?
Times.
Right?
Yeah.
But Yianni
I've never wrestled.
Never.
Yeah.
But as far as what's going on in the weight class, being familiar with these guys, like there's no better guy than you to come in and share your insights about the match, what your perspective was. So what was your takeaway about the whole thing? Let's let's just jump into the match and what your thoughts were in general about the match itself yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a very exciting 2-1 match. I mean, extremely exciting. I was surprised. I was surprised by a lot of things. I was surprised by Penn State's challenge right away. I thought that was going to come back and hurt Zain, but obviously it didn't. And I was surprised that Cornell did not get challenged when they kind of got in that role.
Yeah, so let's take it back from that first one, and it was off Zain's attack, right?
Zain hit a double leg.
Low
Yanni's
double.
Right leg was kind of out in front, and Yianni sat to his butt and had kind of that like chest lock, and Zain's head was trapped right under his stomach.
And it looked like it looked tight, and it looked like Zain was getting the exposure. Like at first glance, in real speed, you're like, was that?
Yeah.
And then
it was close. The exposure was close. And obviously, he needed to pop his head out to score the takedown. So it was close. And they might have been sitting on the other end when it looked really looked like they had it. And, of course, if you would have won that would have been huge as well because every point in a match like that matters. So
right away, I'm sure everybody that's watching is like, here we go again, another challenge, right? A challenge in the first minute. It's like, how's this going to go? Because, in live speed, it's like, might go either way. I don't know what they're doing, but then once they showed the full replay, of like, no, that's nothing. That's gonna be one Yianni. He's But maybe I forget who I was joking around with. Maybe I was like, maybe Kale threw the block because he's like, hey, you guys were all complaining about the last challenge. I'll give you this challenge back. I know I'm not gonna win it, so I'll spot you this point because
bold strategy, but it worked for him. So that was crazy. I thought Zain's game plan was awesome. I wasn't sure that it would be able to be good enough to beat Yianni, who's ever changing. Right? You watch Yianni, every match he's different, which is, when we were trying to get Joey prepared to wrestle Yianni. We were preparing for someone who's constantly changing. Right, so you never know.
He's like one of the hardest guys to game plan for, because you think you're game planning for this, and when the guy comes on the mat, he shows that ability. Ben and I have talked about is like he's one of those guys that has the ability to adapt in a match.
Yeah.
So even if you're preparing for him, like you don't know, like you better know, like from minute to minute and period to period, like he's able to switch gears and bring something new.
Yeah. So that was surprising for me, because I figured that Penn State and Zain would have a good game plan, and I just thought that Yianni would be able to pull it out at the end. You always see, and I think we were talking about this earlier, when you have somebody who's won a lot in a row, especially a lot of close ones in a row, you always expect them to pull it out. So even at the end, I thought that Yianni was going to go cradle, something cradle when Zain got in and score and be a dramatic victory again, and it didn't. So I give Zain a lot of credit, because the momentum was very, very heavy in Yianni's favor. I mean, he wrestled all these tournaments, and he wrestled the All-Star match, and he was winning everything. And Zain, the guy who, initially was a world team guy, wrestled in the Yasardo, who got hurt against Yianni, beat him. Everybody's, the whole media, everybody, all the fans are super pro Yianni.
And I think let's go back to Dogu, because I don't think a lot of people, they think about like Dogu and think, oh, this is just another wrestling match. But there's a lot of other psychological things that had accumulated in between Final X, the arbitration, the lawsuit, the hearing, all this. And I think Zain talked a little bit about it yesterday. I think he was pretty candid and honest. Like I was ticked. I was angry about the process, and people don't understand. Like if you carry that emotion into a match against another high-level competitor that's at the top 1% in the world, just like you, if you're carrying that extra emotion and your head's a little clouded, like that was the only match in this series, even though Yianni's won a lot of them, like that there was really some separation.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
like Yianni clearly separated himself in that match. I'm like, I was looking at it as like, okay, obviously there was a bit of an injury. I don't think that played a huge factor in it. Yeah. But it's like the ease with which Yianni was scoring. I'm like, this isn't like the other matches. I'm like, what's going on here? Something doesn't look quite right. So maybe you can talk about like those little psychological things and how much they can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, mentally, if you're not ready to go mentally, things can happen that it's to someone who's just watching, it really blows your mind. It happens when people get stressed, when they get tired, right? Big scramble right away, and someone's tired in 30 seconds. Like, no, they're a great athlete. They're not in bad shape, but stress can do crazy things. And I think in that case, right, he wasn't. I don't think he was out of shape. He wrestled the full match. He wrestled, so that part didn't affect him. But the idea of Yianni being almost like the underdog, nothing to lose. Right? Zain has a spot technically for now. I think that was great for Yianni, right? He's trending upward. And Zain, everybody's saying that Yianni should have the spot. And it was a bad call. And, Yianni's better. And he's probably got in his own head, too. He probably got in his own head. And it was probably like, man, I'm not going to. And then things start going bad. And then the whole match goes down. And so I'm sure he was angry about it before, and he was probably very frustrated afterwards, thinking, what's going on. So he had to really get his mind right quick, because, mentally, if you have two guys who are really, really good, and all the matches except that one, they've been extremely close. If you're not right mentally, and if you're not, giving yourself the positive thoughts or whatever thoughts that you need to be able to compete hard, then it can be a problem for you.
One of the other things I was thinking about, and we kind of talked about it a couple weeks ago with the Dake Derringer match, like, and this isn't just in wrestling, but it's in every sport. Like when you we immediately, as a society, as fans and spectators, latch on to the thing that's front and center in our mind. And what's been front and center in our mind, at 65 is like all the success that that Yianni's had. He wins his second NCAA title. He storms through and wrestles an incredible U.S. Open.
Yeah.
He goes to beat the streets.
Yeah.
And then final X, and then he goes and beats and wins Dagu. And so everybody's like, "Oh, Yianni's this, Yianni's this, Yianni's this," and I'm like, "Wait a second."
Yeah, it's easy to forget.
Zane's pretty good, just like Dake. I'm like, all right, I know what Derringer's been doing all year, and I know what the level of competition he's been doing it to. But let's not forget, this guy's a world champ. Let's not forget, Zane's a former world team member, 3-time NCAA champ, and people are like in the span of 2 months, they're not even giving him a hope of making this match or winning this match.
Easy to forget, and it's kind of a, what have you done for me lately type of world, right?
Right.
And anything, and probably especially sports. So it makes sense that people were heavy on the Yianni train, but it was a great match. It was fun to watch. It was. I know a lot of people wanted to see 2 matches.
Yeah.
But I think, it was cool to see Zain be so happy afterwards, because it's, I don't know. I feel like Zain kind of competes, his composure out there. I like it a lot. I don't know if we're similar. I don't know but I like it a lot, and it was cool to see some emotion, because it's, I know it's real, like just very, very happy that he won.
That was just like a true release.
Yeah.
You could just see like the emotion and just like you. I remember every title I saw you win, you weren't the guy that's running around doing backflips or anything like that. You were obviously excited, but you're not this big demonstrative guy. And that's kind of how Zain was when I watched him winning all his NCAA titles. But to see him just like literally jump out of his body, you could just see how much everything meant and everything that had been going on in his mind, and the things that you're saying, well, you can only control what you control, but that's an easy thing to say.
Easy to say.
But when you're hearing all these things, everybody's talking about it, you can't get away from it. Everybody's like, I don't think about it. No, you're thinking about it, right? And so that was great for me to see. But what did you pick up? Like, it didn't, on the surface, if you're just looking at it, it didn't look like Zain was doing anything dramatically different. But there were some subtle changes, like even not allowing, outside of the first 15 seconds, can't really remember Yianni getting elbow control. That's where he kind of wants to be. When he gets elbow control, he's coming.
Yeah, he really limited Yianni's attacks. And when Yianni did get in, I think they said it on the stream, and I'm not sure if it was correct or not, but if Yianni's got his hands locked on Zain every time they wrestled, he scored. So for Zain to scramble out a couple times, and the one-time score off that kind of crotch lock was impressive.
Yeah.
And just he really neutralized Yianni's offense. I think he stayed far enough away that Yianni couldn't hit his swim high C. He was trying that at the end. And I was surprised. I was surprised that Yianni had a harder time getting to his attack.
Because he really didn't. I mean, he didn't really generate. That's the first time. I think a lot of times we think about Yianni's defense, but he has equally great offense as well. He's got good leg attacks to both sides of the body. But he's so difficult to score, and we kind of focus on his defense. But this is back to his offense. This is the first time that I really saw him. It felt like he was really pressing. Like after that first couple minutes, like I'm not seeing what I thought I was going to be seeing, and then he was just like pressing, and almost like that last 3 minutes, like low percentage attacks, shooting from space, shooting from the open without any movement or setups. And
it seemed as if maybe his game plan, he probably had a set game plan, and it just wasn't going his way, and he was probably getting frustrated with it, because usually all of this stuff works. So I would imagine, obviously, without knowing anything of what his game plan was, I would imagine that he had a game plan of what he was very confident that he was going to do, and it just wasn't working. And I bet, from having lost plenty of tough matches myself, I think that match for him probably went by in the blink of an eye, and he probably, I'm sure that he is just kind of going over it like crazy right now and just thinking, man, why it was so fast? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? Because I mean, for me, I always second guess myself in a match that was like that, where it was 2-1, low scoring, but lots of action. I bet that he's feeling that it just, probably thinking of all the things that, he had planned that he was going to do. But man, it was fun. It was fun to watch. It was.
Yeah. I mean, if
very
people
exciting 2-1. You see the score, you're like, oh, boring.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it was
if
very
you're
exciting.
really into high level wrestling, that's as good as matches you're gonna wish for.
Yeah, I'm not like a big hand fighting guy. Where you watch a match and they're hand fight for forever, and it's 2-1, and afterwards, everyone's like, "Wow, that was such great technique." I'm like, "That's boring. Like, nothing happened." But this was a totally different 2-1. Like, action all over the place, good scrambles, and a lot of almost scores. So it was good.
I think maybe get your thoughts on Zain specifically, but two things that really impressed me. One was his discipline in understanding when he should wrestle for a stalemate. Because I think that's what's gotten him in trouble in the past. I think going in is like, all right, if I get to one leg, that's when the fight's really going to start.
Yeah.
And it's like it almost looked in some of the previous matches like just on principle, he's like, no, we're going to see who's better in this position. Yeah. And he, that's a hard thing to admit to yourself as an athlete. Like, this guy might be a little bit better in certain situations, so I'm better living to fight another day. So I was really impressed with Zain's discipline to wrestle for a stalemate in certain situations. And then, what we were talking about just before, we're talking about how Yianni's defense is the best in the world, but holy heck, Zain's defense was equally phenomenal yesterday.
Yeah, Zain's defense was awesome. I was extremely impressed that he was able to, one, stop Yianni from attacking, but also when he got in, not give up any scores. And then, what was the first thing you mentioned again? Because I had the stalemates.
Right.
Yes. So that's crazy to be able to do that, and I think it's a very, very important skill to have in a big match, to be able to take the stalemate and know what not to do. And it's funny because I think last year or 2 years ago we were at the training center, and Coach John Smith was showing some low ankle stuff, and we were there watching, and I think he was helping out Kyle with some stuff, and Kyle asked him about stalemate or a bad shot, or the guy was doing something good defensively, and John was like, "Yeah, I stalemate it, and just get back in right away. Like, if I didn't like it, I would stalemate it and go again. No need to put yourself in bad position." And that was pretty powerful, because you usually taught to wrestle through everything.
Right, that's a foreign concept to us, right? Like, so, we're always taught you gotta score no matter what. You got to figure out a way.
Yeah. So being able to have the discipline to take the stalemate, and obviously in practice, I would recommend keep wrestling. But when you're in a big match, and you know what's happening, and you know what your opponent has, man, it is very important skill. And if you can have that, I think that you have a great wrestling mind.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Let's wrap up on this. We've this flown by just like every other podcast that we do. It's just kind of flown by. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about is like, okay, so now that the team set our 65, U.S. team member, Zain is the guy. The team's finally set. Now we're 2 weeks away, and I know what Zain was talking about yesterday is like, hey, nothing's changing. I prepared for this just like I'm preparing for the Worlds. that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I know what he's saying.
For sure.
And the reality for both guys, whoever won this match, it's not ideal for either guy.
No, yeah.
But it is what it is. You just gotta do it. So what would you say to Zain, or put yourself in his shoes? Like, okay, I had this protracted, arbitration, legal fight for 2 months. I don't know. There's so many uncertainties. Now I've got basically 2.5 weeks to reset the mechanism, be ready to go to compete for a world title.
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance that, or what's your mental approach leading into this?
Yeah. Well, I would say that I think college wrestling really prepares our guys for stuff like this. I mean, wrestle the Big Tens and the Nationals, and I know that, of course, you want to peak for the Nationals, and Big Tens are less important, or your conference tournament's less important, but you really are peaking for both. I mean, it is important. You want to win both. You want to do your best in both. So I think the college season will help Zain in that regard. And me personally, I liked when I was in 2016 rather than 17 and 18, the shorter time. I think the longer time, you can just think so much about it, and you can plan ahead, which is good. But there's only a certain number of wrestlers who are going to have really unique things that you have to watch out for. One of them he just beat.
Yeah.
So I think Zain, it'll be important for that he's really concentrating on himself, and I think that he wrestled really well, and that was maybe the best version of him, or close to the best version of him. I think he'll take a couple of days off, work out probably Thursday, Friday, and then get into I think Germany on Saturday, and just have a good couple of hard days, and then be ready to go. I think that all the circumstances aside, I think that he'll like this year better than 2017 when he made the team.
Yeah.
How quickly the turnaround is. I think that he will. I think that he'll like that. And I don't know if he'll compete better. And I don't know. Well, obviously we'll see what happens, but I think the short turnaround time is fine. I think it's okay. I think that he's in great shape, and he's ready to wrestle. And it feels good sometimes to have competed and have that hardness. Your mind and your body, that hardness. Like, I just competed. I just wrestled best guy. All right, I beat him. I'm ready to wrestle right now.
Yeah, because most of the other guys in the world team last week, they finished up their final domestic world team camp, and you're going through simulations, right?
Kyle did simulation matches. Zain just did his simulation.
It's simulation, but like to your point, it was the real thing, though.
Yeah.
A simulation, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still a simulation, right?
It was one hard.
But here you're like, no, I'm getting one of the other best guys in the world, his best effort, and I came out on top. I'm walking away, my knee's feeling good, or his ankle or whatever was dinged up from the previous competition in Dogu. So yeah, he's got to be feeling good, and especially in this weight class, like, you've got to go in, because 65 is probably the deepest weight class in the entire world.
Yeah, I think that it probably is. I think when you know the guys, because you study them, you always think that they're better probably than the guys you don't know from the other weight classes. But I think that this is probably the deepest weight class. If not, it's right up there. And I think that Zain is going to have to beat a bunch of good guys. There's not going to be an easy side of the bracket unless there's 7 guys on one side who are awesome. I think that there's a lot of really, really tough guys, and there's not going to be too many easy outs.
And it's almost, do you think it's seedings don't really matter? It's more matchups, style matchups. It's so deep. There's so much talent. It doesn't really. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's going to be. Yeah, the seed's not going to matter. Yeah. Zain won't be seeded, but it won't matter. I don't think he's going to have probably a good guy right away.
Yeah.
I think the seed only it gives you one last match, but kind of is what it is,
Yeah. Well, cool. We, as usual, anybody that tunes in regularly, we've gone over again on the podcast. But Logan, appreciate you coming in here, jumping in, filling in for Ben. Appreciate your insight. Again, if you're in Ohio, the Columbus local area, definitely look up Stieber Elite I before E Wrestling Academy. Sign up. He's going 3 days a week. But Logan, thanks again for coming in. Thanks for excited for everything you got going on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Okay, take care.